Greetings everybody, this is Thunderhands. Today we're going to talk about the martial arts, intel, like as in intelligence or intelligence service, and spirituality. And I know you're already wondering, well, how do all these things go together? Aren't they diametrically opposed? The short answer is that they go together well. They go together well. And I want to explain to you how this is possible. But before I get into this, let me just give you a little bit of background about my martial arts experience and my experience with intel and that type of thing. Now, in order to explain my background, let me first explain the types of martial arts there are. There are what we call the soft style, which is something like Tai Chi, and then we have the hard style, which people tend to think of as karate or one of those arts. Also Aikido or Aikido would be included in the soft style, but also has within it roots of jujitsu, and I don't mean judo, I mean jujitsu, which is a form of using your limbs and your opponent's limbs to fight. Now, the main arts that I studied, or the main martial arts or applications that I came in contact with for many, many, many years, I was first exposed to Tai Chi, which is the supreme ultimate, a Chinese form, and I did what they called Yang style Tai Chi, and I practice that every day to this day, as I do all my martial arts. And the hard forms that I studied were Kung Fu San Soo, Kung Fu San Soo, which is the most brutal, hardcore form of fighting from the Kuan-Yin monastery in China. But it made its way through the triad gangs and went through all kinds of changes before it got to America. But that is one of the hardest forms of martial arts ever known. And it includes everything: kicks, punches, leverages, breaks. Most of the stuff you see in the martial arts movies are these Bourne type movies, Bourne Identity, that type of thing. Most of the things you see in there, the choreographed movements, are based on that type of fighting, Kung Fu San Soo. And I learned this in a period in my life where I felt that I needed to, or I was in a position where I had to, because of being in harm's way. But it actually started much later, or I mean much earlier in my life when I was younger. Things just came to me. I just got visions and, got into altercations and used things that I felt. Things came to me. But later on, I got into it pretty heavily and made a deep study of the Eastern martial arts and the philosophy surrounding them, like the code of Bushido in the Japanese culture and so forth. So the hard forms that I studied were Kung Fu San Soo, and the soft form was Tai Chi. Then I also went to acupuncture school so that I could learn all the acupuncture points on the body. And the reason that I went to the school at the time was to learn the points for purposes of harm. But later on, as I got more into it, I decided that it was just as important to use these points for healing, and realizing that that was all part of the energy system. But that's another story. I learned a lot about healing, let's put it that way, as well as fighting, or as well as, so it was the yin and yang again, the duality. Now getting back to the hard, the martial arts that I know, that I had the pleasure of learning from different masters. One master who shall remain unnamed, for certain reasons, created a combination of Kung Fu Sansu, which I mentioned before as being one of the most brutal arts. He was ex-military and a veteran. And he taught Kung Fu Sansu, and he also taught what he learned as far as hand-to-hand combat, and he mixed that together and created his own system, and it was known as SCARS, S-C-A-R-S, an acronym for Special Combat Aggressive Reactionary Systems. And this system was the first system that was accepted by the United States Navy as a system that could be used to teach Navy SEALs how to fight, how to kill with their hands. And so the combination of Sansu and real-time combative experience produced this SCAR system. And again, it was taught to the Navy SEALs. Now, at the particular time I was associated and learning, and I'd reached a degree in the school, taught by this person who was the master. And as he was forming this system to teach the Navy SEALs, they would come in, of course, to our, what we call a dojo or a training center. Those of us who had already been trained would work out with these SEALs when they came in to the training center, and we would teach them everything we knew. So basically they learned within the training center, outside the military base, and then the master would go out to the military base and take a few of us with him, and we would go to their turf or their ground and teach them there. But one of the things that you learned when you're working out with a Navy SEAL is the mentality. And there's a big difference between working out with people off the street and people that are engaged in activities that are life-threatening on a day-to-day basis. So they form what is called a kill mentality. And when you work out with these people, you feel that energy. And so in order to be at par or up to par with them as far as fighting skills, you have to match that energy as you're working out with them. And so you get into that mentality, that kill mentality, that mentality of this could mean my life. Now, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, that's for each individual to decide for themselves. But again, it's in the duality, folks, and it's we live in a pretty harsh world. Now, I can honestly say that I feel that was a benefit to me, because I never walked down the street ever again in my life fearing harm, because after studying the code of Bushido and Tai Chi and Aikido and Kung Fu Sansu and SCARS, that's what the acronym for that system was, SCARS. When I studied all these things and felt together, felt confident, there was a saying in the school, they might take my life, but they'll never take my confidence. So I don't know, that's something to think about. So anyway, I studied many years, many years, but I incorporated everything that I learned from different systems. Like I studied Aikido and Budo and Bushido, which is Japanese, and I studied Chinese, Kung Fu Sansu, Tai Chi, hard and soft, so that I was competent, completely competent in all areas. And then I used Qigong for energy exercises to allow the prana and qi to flow through my body. Energy work on a very high level. People talk about energy work and I almost laugh. They say, yeah, I went to school for 2 weeks and I got this certificate on how to be a Reiki master. Okay, whatever. But anyway, when you learn the Chinese martial arts, or the Chinese form of martial arts, you realize quickly that qi is energy. And I already knew that because I was a practicing yogi in the Kundalini yoga tradition. I learned a tradition called Kriya, which means movement of energy. Still practice that today also. I kind of mix everything together, and that's what I want to get to. I mixed everything together. So that's my background. That's my background in the martial arts. And you know, I figured whether I went to war or not as a warrior, and this is the way you should think. And let me say, I also read every book, The Art of War by Sun Tzu, and The Book of Five Rings by Musashi, and The Hagakure. All these books that discuss martial tactics and war tactics. And the reason that I did this is there's an old saying that's very appropriate. Know thy enemy. So in order to know thy enemy, you have to become the enemy. You have to become the enemy. You have to know everything they know. You have to know everything that a combat, special ops, military person would know. Or whether it be Army Rangers, Navy SEALs, whatever, the Mossad. You want to know the same stuff they know. And you want to be informed also. And then that's when we get to the intel part, or the intelligence part. You want to have all bases covered so that you're not just walking around out there in la la land. Okay? You know things. You know the same things they know. You try to make connections in that area. So it's good to have your intel bases covered too, like knowing what's going on in the world on any level. And of course, I've told you before, some people are going, man, this guy's done a lot of things. Well, yeah, I have done a lot of things. There's so many things that I've done. It's amazing. I mean, I amaze myself. It's almost like 10 lifetimes in one. Having been a pilot, a martial artist, and into the different forms of esoteric meditation, Chinese. But that all kind of came with the martial arts, and a lot of things are linked up to one another. Heck, I was even a meteorologist, and that had to do with aviation. But I put all these things together and use them to my benefit. And that's why when I speak about different things, I'm not totally coming from a place of, oh yeah, this is how it is, folks. I just think this is how. No, I've experienced it. And I've talked about the Apaches too. I've talked about the Apache people, and I consider them to be one of the greatest guerrilla fighters. I mean, right up there with Navy SEALs, maybe even better. I won't say better, I'll just say at par with or better. And so that's why I always say think like an Apache. And then I have the tracking element. There I go again. Folks, I'm not bragging here. I'm just giving you a synopsis of my overall life. Besides the spiritual aspect that I think everybody knows a lot about because of my books. So I have different facets of myself, different sides of myself. So the reason that I'm giving you all this background is because I want to relate this to spirituality. And you say, well, how does that relate to spirituality? Well, everything that you learn, meditation technique, everything is energy. I mean, that's what it boils down to. Everything is energy, and everything is spiritual. When you think about it, everything is spiritual. Because how can you not be spiritual? I mean, everybody and everything on this planet is spiritual, and it's just to what degree you realize your spirituality, or that you get into your spirituality. I guess it basically is what I'm saying is, it's to what degree do you realize or have self-realization that you are one with the creative energy of the universe? And to what degree do you realize that within the duality we have all these martial arts systems, energy systems, and all this other type of thing? To what degree do you realize that you can step outside and inside that? You know, it's really important to be well-rounded in all these areas, or know a little bit. Like, for instance, even on my computer, I have different programs that I go to that I can look at the earthquakes every day. I can look at the weather. This would be part of the intel thing. I can look at the weather. I can look at the earthquakes. I can look at patterns of weather. I can look at radar images. I can look at how many planes are flying across the United States and how much fuel is being spread upon us. I can look at chemtrails. I can look at predator drones, how many are being flown over the United States at any one time. I mean, if you get the right software, folks, you can know anything. It's like having your own little CIA, your own little intelligence base. So basically, what I'm saying here is, be aware. Be aware. Use everything to your advantage, because times are tight. Times are, pretty intense. So rather than go to the mainstream media or television and turn on the boob tube, instead of doing that, you have your own little newsroom, but it's real. It's not lies. So you network yourself into, you might use certain YouTube videos or YouTube connections. And there's news services all over the world that give their viewpoint as opposed to the United States viewpoint. There's press news which comes from Iran. I find them very balanced with a slight prejudice. Of course, everybody has their prejudice for their country. And then there's Russia Today, which is actually based in the United States and Russia, and is an alternative news organization, much like CNN, except they tell the truth. CNN's just a crock of lies, as is Fox and all the rest of them, MSNBC and all that stuff. So basically what I'm getting to here, folks, is that you have to have your own intel. You have to, you have to learn, and this all has to do with survival. It all has to do with making your life, making you feel more comfortable in your situation. That way you don't rely upon the government to protect you. You protect yourself. You become your own tribe. You become like an Apache. You know how to fight. Okay? And I mean firearms too. All these people out there, well, we got to ban all the guns. And then there's the people that go to the other extreme and get 1,000,000 guns, just two sides of the same coin. But I was raised around, I was raised in Arizona, and my dad had guns, and I used guns for sport, or not to kill animals so much as just for fun, blowing beer cans off the side of a aqueduct or whatever, just to be able to use another tool. So therefore, it wasn't anything scary for me back. I mean, heck, when I was a kid, it was just in Arizona. It was just a way of life. And you had other things too, like knives, and so you learned how to use those correctly, and bows and arrows, and just a lot of different things that you got into. So I consider myself well-rounded in the area of martial arts, intel, and spirituality. And so that's why I come on here, and that's why I try to inform people on different levels about, what they need to do to survive. So I guess I consider myself basically a well-rounded tracker, fighter, warrior, spiritual person. But the older I get, it gets more into wisdom. But I still work out every day, regardless. Come what may, I work out every day, And so, till I drop, I'll try to keep my body in as good a condition as I can and keep the chi flowing and all that good stuff. So, I think what the message is here with this, I'm going to make this a short. I might have a part 2, a short show. I think a part 2 might be in order. So use all this stuff. Be your own intel service. Learn the martial arts. You learn yoga. You learn everything. Try to cram as much into your knowledge base or your brain or whatever you want to call it, and open up to receiving from other levels, because once you get into these things, you start receiving. If you ask the spirits of those different art forms, martial arts and all that, to help you with it, you find yourself excelling. Find yourself opening up, just like you would open up as a musician if you were playing, or open up as a spiritual person to channel that higher source, that higher energy. It's all out there in what they call the Akashic records, which is a record of everything that ever was and ever will be out in the ether. All knowledge is there. That's why people come up with the same ideas at the same time. And I've tapped into this for years. And then when I had some visions, I became it. So, it's a dimensional thing. It's a snapping back and forth in between that dimension and this dimension. And if you don't think that can be disconcerting at times, people say, I want to be enlightened. I want to know all this stuff. And, well, I warn you, it's kind of a blessing and a curse at the same time, And nobody ever gets to that point. The more you learn, that saying about the more you know you don't know, is true. It's very, very true. Because the more you learn, you realize, oh, there is just so many things to learn that you could learn. I mean, it would take 6 lifetimes. And that's why people say, well, you've done all kinds of things. And they think I'm like kidding or something. And I go, well, I'm just trying to cram as much into this lifetime as I can. For what reason? Who knows? Maybe it's just my purpose. Maybe it's the way I roll, man. But that's who I am, and I allow Great Spirit to guide me in a direction. What this is all for? Well, maybe this is what this is all for, to inform others. When people get caught in such ruts, they just do the same thing every day, or they do things that aren't really going to be beneficial to them in an important way. Like, I used to go down to the beach because I live by the beach here. Off and on, I've lived by the beach. I go back and forth between the coast and Arizona. But some days I'd lay down at the beach and I'd see these guys and girls out there playing volleyball. And they're working up this sweat and they're really going at it, and they're out there in the sun having fun in their little bikinis and whatever. And they're exercising, and it's good. That's good. But I'm laying there and I'm thinking, man, I wonder if they have a clue as to there's all kinds of exercises that are available to them that could save their life, in a situation where, that they might face at some time. You'd be surprised how many people are walking around paranoid, scared. Used to be you could walk down the street and nod at somebody. I mean, you'd probably even know their first name. Hey, George, how's it going? Yeah, man, how are you? How you been? You might stop and talk a while, ask about the family, that type of thing. Now you walk down the street, there's so many friggin' people. We're all just a number. And these people look at you like with paranoia in their eyes, especially if they feel you have strong energy. And you can tell the scared rabbits, and believe me, so can the predators out there. They pick up on energy. They know who's scared. I mean, you look people right in the eyes is what you do, folks. You don't avert your glance. You say hello to their face. I say hello to certain people on the streets, men or women, it doesn't make any difference. And they look at you like you're some kind of, robot, or maybe they're the robot and they look at you as you're so foreign to them because you're actually being a real person. you know you're saying hello and you're smiling and you're sending them good energy, and they freak. They avert their glance. They walk stiffly away sometimes. They don't even say a word to you. And sometimes they go, hello, I did say hello to you. I mean, it's kind of aggravating. Wake these people up. Get them out of their paranoia. Everybody's afraid of everybody. Well, if they knew the martial arts, if they knew intel, if they knew what they were doing, they wouldn't be so afraid, would they? They'd walk with confidence. They'd look people in the eyes. And with the martial arts comes the concept in Bushido of no fear of death. I mean, if you go, you go. When you're in a fight, I mean, it's whoever wins. If somebody knows more than you do, and they're a bad guy or whatever, at least you got a fighting chance, though. And so I talk about this stuff because it's in my book Emergence. There's parts of it where Thunder has to confront people and hurt people to protect him and Natalie, the other character, his twin soul. And he teaches her all the same things, and she loves it. And they work out together. They have little sparring matches, and that's another thing too. The stuff I learned, it's not like these, you think of martial arts dojos, or this is more of a training center, and we didn't pull our punches. We didn't pull our punches. We wore what they call a cup around the groin area so that you could take a solid hit there, or kick. We punched each other. We got each other into leverages. Some people got hurt. Some people got hurt seriously. It was a serious training facility. It was a mindset. We'd even have dreams. We'd get together and discuss our dreams sometimes. Because you would find yourself going through these motions and fighting motions in your dreams. It wasn't like the normal little, I won't mention any names, but all these, dojos or martial arts training centers that spring up. Bring your kids in, It wasn't like that. This was the real deal. And so, folks, you need to learn how to use skills that you have, your own body, how to use your own body and convert it to skills that will empower you. And you need to be your own intelligence service and your own battalion or warrior or individual warriorship or whatever you want to call it. And you need to be your own spiritual master. So if you're all of these things, then you pretty well have the bases covered. Pretty well have the bases covered. And tracking, you throw that in there. And see, that's what the Apache knew all these things. They had intel. They had their own intelligence service. They're called scouts and wisdom keepers and medicine men. So you combine that with all the stuff that I just mentioned, which I do, just kind of came naturally. You become in that mindset, the same kind of mindset that an Apache had, or anybody that had to live off the land, defend themselves, be a guerrilla fighter, but yet be spiritual at the same time. People, this stuff can coexist. Because you know it doesn't mean you have to go out and kill people. Because you have a gun doesn't mean you go out and kill people. No, it just gives you equal footing with some of the people that are roaming around out there that are basically, nutcases, psychos. And it's not their fault. I'm not blaming them. It's just a fact of life, a fact of life. There's psychos running around. Not everybody's love and light. Not everybody's spiritual. Not everybody's, there's a lot of predators out there, not just in the sky. They're walking around the streets. And if it ever comes down, I mean, if the the proverbial whatever hits the fan, it's good to know all this stuff. It's good to have like friends that know all this stuff. You're not going to find too many people that do. A lot of people are going to be victimized. So I don't know, that was just kind of a pull, not pull your punches type talk that I felt that I needed to impart to you. The yin and the yang, the black and the white, it's all there.